Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After running through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan community where we answer Dolphins fans' questions. So much to talk about in today's show. I'm excited to get into it. We have an update on the Brian Flores situation, which I'm very excited to talk about. We have the update on all the coaching candidates that the Dolphins will be interviewing, which I'm very, very excited to talk about. Some really interesting names on there. So let's start with this first news story, and I want to start with Brian Flores because we have a lot more clarity on the situation. This news story comes from Pro Football Rumors and Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. So let's start here. For starters, Flores wanted full control over the organization. Again, this is more information on why he was fired. For starters, Flores wanted full control over the organization, including roster decisions over general manager Chris Grier. The coach wanted more power in everything and wanted more people to report to him. And he wanted this decision-making distinction officially formalized, so he wanted to hit the title of head coach / GM. According to Jackson, Flores had already had a great deal of control, and there wasn't a single player on the roster who Flores didn't sign off on. Still, tensions remained high between Flores and Grier. And I guess we'll talk about stuff after this because there's a lot more here. But even that is just weird. But we'll get to it after we get done reading this. Flores' power grab went beyond the normal duties of a head coach. According to Jackson, Flores requested the firing of the team's top football media relations person, while he received pushback from top executives like Tom Garfinkel. The employee was ultimately dismissed. Flores also chewed out an agent who posted a positive offseason update about an injured player. Furthermore, Flores planned on making more changes to his staff, especially with his offensive coaches. The Dolphins were operating with 2 offensive coordinators. By the time the season came to an end, Flores was planning on firing at least one of them, if not almost, and he was also, it goes on to say that he was thinking about firing both of them. So we would have, I guess, started off with another offensive coordinator for whatever reason. And I believe that. To top it all off, Flores apparently had issues communicating with some of his players, with some of his younger members on the team, claiming the head coach doesn't understand dealing with men. Meanwhile, veterans like Jason McCourty wouldn't be treated like his younger teammates. Did not want to be treated with the same heavy hand as his younger teammates. There was also tension with quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, with the two having a heated exchange during the game against the Tennessee Titans. So there's a lot to break down there. I think the main thing that got him fired was the power struggle between him and Grier. I think another major reason, I think the 2 major reasons were the struggle with him and Grier, and the direction that everyone else wanted to go in was very different than the direction Brian Flores wanted to go in. And I think a lot of that had to do with Tua. I think there's a lot of people, and we've heard this over the week and even from this, there's people within the organization that like Tua a lot more than obviously Brian Flores does. And I think it's been well documented since his firing. And this article goes on to say how he wanted full control of the organization. The firing of the media member thing is kind of whatever. Who really cares? I mean, I don't really understand why that's a detriment to Brian Flores. Everything else, I think, was within. It was very understandable why he would want that. It's the thing that's interesting, though, is Barry Jackson points out that he already had full control of the players who was going to be. He had full say in who was coming to the Dolphins. He signed off on everything that Chris Grier did. So it's weird that I guess there obviously was a disagreement in there somewhere if those two didn't get along. And I think it had to do with more along the lines of what the quarterback situation was. And from every angle you view this decision to fire him, I think it's just incompetence all the way around. I mean, we hear that Stephen Ross is more of a satellite owner. He's not in the day-to-day operations of the Dolphins, which is not a good thing when you're making a decision like this. So it just makes you wonder. Obviously, he's not seeing this firsthand. He's getting this information secondhand from people that work under him that have an interest to stay there and want to stay there. And obviously, they're not going to be Brian Flores supporters if Brian Flores was requesting full control of the organization. So his decision obviously wasn't made with all the information. Because we could point out flaws in Chris Greer all day. I think the biggest flaw, and I don't want to jump all over the place. I want to stay on this whole Brian Flores situation. Because I was very critical of him getting fired. I still don't like the decision, and clearly the decision wasn't made with all the information, like I just said. And if we compare resumes from Chris to Brian, to me, it's not even close. I think for a lot of Dolphins fans, it isn't very close. I still think it's a bad decision. It's not so much to ask and crazy for a man to be fired for these reasons. I think it's kind of ridiculous that we're sitting here and saying, wow, we're putting in an article of the reason, and obviously they're just documenting the reason why he was fired, but who cares if the dude, and Stephen Ross went on to say that he wants more cooperation within the organization. Well, then fire Chris Greer. Don't fire Brian Flores. If he wanted full control of the roster, I would have given it to him. I think if it came down to the fact that he did not want Tua as his starting quarterback, how many Dolphins fans right now would argue, if they were in the building with Brian Flores, would argue against him not wanting Tua as his quarterback? I think there's a lot of Dolphins fans that would agree with him. And the fact that he was fired because of that, and one of the bigger reasons is that's the reason he was fired, I think is ridiculous. So why every reason that they gave, even in this article and stuff that has come out, I think a lot of Dolphins fans would agree with Brian Flores on a lot of those decisions he was going to make. Maybe not firing the offensive coordinators again. I don't think a lot of Dolphins fans would have agreed with that. But his roster, at least the biggest roster decision he wanted to make with Tua, I think a lot of Dolphins fans would have agreed with him on that. And I think if we had to poll Dolphins fans, who would they have rather keep, Chris Greer or Brian Flores? If they were in the shoes of the owner, they would have picked Brian Flores, and they would have given him full control of the team. And I don't think a lot of people would, especially around the league, and it's Dolphins fans especially, I don't think would have been upset about that. So, from every angle you look at this firing, I just think that our owner is incompetent in a lot of different areas, and he obviously, like I said, wasn't dealing with all the information, and to me, it's still a bad decision. I think we should have kept Brian Flores. I think, I don't know why you wouldn't, and I think the reasons for him being fired are questionable in themselves, to say the least. Now, I want to get into some of this other stuff. The whole players not respecting him thing and how he had difficulty communicating to him, I completely disagree with. Just because of the way that the players respond to him on the field, it's like you're telling me that guy doesn't know how to communicate with his players. I really don't think that's true. Maybe I do believe he had issues with Tua. I think that's pretty clear that he had issues with Tua. But everyone else on the team, maybe he was a little bit less invested in some of the offensive players. But the defensive players loved him. I think that was clear when you watch the team play. After every single win, the fact that they went up to him and hugged him and stuff like that just shows you how much they cared about him as a head coach. So the whole thing, he wasn't good at communicating with his players, I don't really necessarily buy, in my opinion. Now, I'm not in the building. I don't know. I do know a lot of the times beat writers are wrong, and some of their sources can be wrong. And I just don't believe, and I do not buy that Brian Flores doesn't know how to communicate with men. I think that's a little ridiculous. I think the biggest flaw of his tenure in Miami, and the thing that he clearly botched, I should say, is botched is not even a thing, but botched is his handling of Tua was not good, and especially his second year as a pro, and even really his first year. Now, I don't know who is making all of the decisions in the background, but I think it's safe to say that Brian definitely was the biggest cheerleader for Deshaun Watson, especially if he didn't get along with the quarterback and he didn't believe in Tua. And if that is true, then the way he handled that was not good. I think there's no way around it. It was awful. The whole organization, not just him, handled it terribly. The owner handled it terribly. The GM handled it terribly. He handled it terribly. And I think that was the worst thing he did as the Dolphins head coach. Is just the way he handled Tua was just not very good. And even with the firing of the offensive coordinators, his relationship with Tua, the off the field stuff that was coming from that, that stemmed from that, all of that stuff, no good. And if that was the reason that, hey, him and Tua not going to get along, they're not going to, be able to be compatible moving forward. If that was the decision, I can kind of understand that decision. I wouldn't agree with that decision. I would have definitely, if Brian wanted to get rid of Tua, I would have let him do it. I mean, I really would have. I trust him more than I trust Tua. But that's a little bit more of a sensible reason to let go of someone. That all of this other stuff, I'm like, yeah, he's right. Like, he's right. The dude is right. He should have full control over Chris Grier. Chris Grier cannot pick players. And that brings me to Chris Grier. Chris Grier, the biggest flaw of Chris Grier is he's a dang doormat. The dude is a doormat. All the excuses for Chris Grier is like, oh, he just kind of deferred to the head coach. In every decision that he's ever made, apparently, Chris Grier has deferred to the head coach. In the Adam Gase era, the excuses for Chris Grier is he deferred to the head coach. When he picked Chris Harris, the excuses for him was that he deferred to the head coach. So the dude's just a doormat. I don't really know what else to say. That's the biggest flaw in him. It's like, how do we criticize someone who's continuously gets away with, oh, it was because of the head coach. He made that decision. So, okay, Chris, well, your job is to pick players, okay? So how about not be a doormat? How about that? How about not do that? And Brian's right. Brian is right. He is a better football mind than Chris Grier. Undeniably, he is. So I don't know. And if he is the one picking the players, all of Chris Grier's best drafts have been with Brian Flores. So even that goes against Chris Grier. So any angle you look at this firing, the reasons Brian Flores got fired are all stupid reasons that I think Dolphins fans, if they own the team, would agree with Brian Flores on. Who would you rather have, Chris Grier or Brian Flores? If Brian Flores went to you as the owner and said, I want full control over this team, you're not going to give it to him over Chris Grier? Of course you would give it to him over Chris Grier. If Brian Flores went up to you and said, hey man, I don't think Tua is the right answer. I want to be aggressive and maybe go on to a veteran quarterback or draft one. Are you going to disagree with him? Is he that crazy for saying that? No, he's not. So, this whole situation is just ridiculous. I think the incompetent ones are Chris Grier and Stephen Ross. I definitely don't think the incompetent one is Brian Flores. So that's kind of where I land on the situation. And it's an unfortunate situation because our owner just is an idiot. I really don't know what else to say. And I brought this up a lot in last week's episode. But the fact that this man said that he wouldn't be the one to take away Harbaugh from Michigan is just another coal to the flame where it's like, man, how more incompetent can you look as the owner of this team? Like, you're just making it even worse. You're making it even worse. You just fired the most successful head coach since Weinstead in the early 2000s. Really the best team that's been built by anybody by himself since Jimmy Johnson, if we're being real. I mean, Weinstein, he inherited some of those players that were obviously major contributors from the Jimmy era. And Brian is the first one out of all of these head coaches since him to build a really good foundation moving forward. So it just I don't know. I'm not very to me, and it will always be a bad decision. Every angle you look at it, there really wasn't other than the handling, and I love how, especially when we talk about the Deshaun Watson situation and how Brian handled that with Tua. It's like, dude, everyone else handled him bad. Stephen Ross handled him bad. Chris handled it bad. They all did not handle it very well. Clearly. And again, and I'll leave us with this whole situation. Chris Grier's got to stop being a doormat, dude. Seriously, man. Stop being a dang doormat. I'm sick and tired of hearing about it. The fact that you defer to everybody, it doesn't make you look better. It makes you look worse. It makes you look a lot worse, actually. So, hopefully, whatever the head coach is who comes by here next and who is hired here next knows how to pick players, because Chris Grier clearly doesn't have, like, what say does he have, dude? If he just defers every single time. He did this with Adam Gase. So this isn't a Brian Flores problem. This is a Chris Grier problem, and Chris Grier's got to fix that. Seriously, man. And honestly, doesn't make me feel more comfortable that whoever the next head coach is will just walk all over him and pick the players for him. It doesn't make me feel that bad, honestly. Now, it does suck that Chris Greer scouts these guys and makes this draft pick board, because I do at least, at the very least, believe that he does some part of his job. All right, so moving on from that crazy, stupid thing that the Dolphins did, let's go into this, which is a very interesting story. This comes from Ian Rappaport of NFL Network. The Miami Dolphins intend to move forward with Tua Tagovailoa as their starting quarterback for the 2022 season. And I want to combine that with this story that comes from, I believe, let me look this to make sure. This comes from Clutch Points Sports and Bleacher Report. The Miami Dolphins entered the 2020 NFL offseason with a league-high $67.5 million projected cap space and one clear goal. They need to figure out by the end of the 2022 season whether Tua Tagovailoa is their quarterback or not, which makes me think that the direction that this team is wanting to go into is not only keeping Tua next year, but to build around him, which is the smart decision, and I hope that these reports are true. But the main headline is the fact that the Dolphins are sticking with Tua, and I think that makes it more clear to everybody that, hey, the reason Brian was fired, one of the bigger reasons at least, was, hey, he didn't believe in Tua, and I guess the rest of the organization and Stephen Ross and Chris Greer did, and that is why. And I wish they just would have said that in the press conference. I don't know why that they have to kind of hide behind that. I honestly don't care that. I don't think Brian Flores cares if they said that. And I think it definitely would have been a more understanding and it would have been a way better look for the two of them than to be vague about it. And they did say that he wasn't compatible with everything else. They should have just said, yeah, we didn't agree with the direction he wanted to bring the team. We liked Tua. He didn't like Tua. That's the reason he got fired. Okay. But the way that they handled it was just not good. And I really wish that that's what they kind of would have said. Or not kind of, that's what they would have said. But the fact that this organization wants to move forward with Tua, obviously Chris Greer does. I'm not against it. Tua played a lot worse the last two games of the year. Even though he won that Patriots game and he made a lot of really good plays, there was a lot of dropped interceptions in that game. To me, his play somehow got worse as the year went on. Or at least it got more inconsistent, because he had good games here and then he would have a bad game. Like the Panthers game, he had a really good game, and then we would play. Who am I thinking of right now? Even in the Jets game, it was up and down a lot, especially towards the end of the year. And he needs to improve on a lot of different things, but not a lot. There's a few things about his game that's like, okay, we got to get better at that. And a lot of the things that were plaguing him was obviously a really weird play calling situation between Charlie Fry, Godsey, and Studsville or Studsville, however you say his name. That was weird. Obviously, the talent around him wasn't bad. I mean, people that the Dolphins got off the street and Phillip Lindsay and Duke Johnson were clearly better than the backs that they had on their roster already. So, talent deficiency, plus your head coach hates you, plus your offense of play calling situation was in shambles for most of the year, tend to lead to not really great things on the field. So, Tua does have, I don't want to say, I guess excuses is the best way to say it. He does have those legitimate reasons that he could point to and be like, dude, I did the best I could with what I had. And I agree with him. If he came to me and said that, I'd be like, dude, I couldn't argue against you. So if Tua has more stability, he has a good head coach, he has a lot of people that believe in him in the organization, and they completely remake this offensive roster and put talent around him and playmaking around him, I'm excited to see where that goes with Tua, because Tua has shown that he can do it. He's made high-level throws. He has a really, really, and this is something that I love about his game, a natural feel of the position. He has I don't want to use the word tremendous. He has great pocket awareness. Like, his pocket awareness is real. It really is. His ability to move people on the back end with his head and read coverages, I think, is really good, especially his ability to move people with his head. His ability to pass from the pocket, I think, is developing in a really, really nice direction. And he has all of the little things that you need to be a great pocket passer. He has the pocket presence. He has the accuracy. And he needs to be more consistent at certain areas on the field on his accuracy. And I think he can get there. and he has the ability to be. I don't know how his eyes are really good, I guess is the best way. The way he reads the field and moves his head and understands leverage and understands defensive backs and safeties. All of those things can lead to him being a great pocket passer. So he has shown traits of elite, and he does have traits of elite. His pocket presence is elite. And I think that's the best thing about his game right now. There's just a few things that he needs to kind of tighten up, and hopefully he can do that. And I think with a better, like I said, more stability at the play calling position, and more with a lot of, and again, people believing him in the organization and surrounding him with more talent, I think are all going to lead to good things. So the decision to move on with Tua, I'm all for. I think if they do it the right way, good things could come of it. He does have a lot to get better. He does have a few things that he really needs to get better at. I think his accuracy over the middle is the number one thing that he has. I'm not even worried about the deep ball. He throws it just fine. His accuracy over the middle is what killed him all year. For some reason, I don't know why, and especially towards the end of the year, and it might have, and I think it had a lot to do with the weather, but he missed a lot over the middle and high. Like, that was his biggest problem. He missed reads over the middle as well. And that's something, and I don't know if it's because his confidence in pulling the trigger on that. I don't know what it is, but that's something he has to get better at. That's the biggest deficiency is in his game, is that like 20 yards down the middle of the field is his biggest deficiency. Crossers, posts, stuff of like that, where someone's kind of like, not tight man-to-man coverage, but they're kind of covered, like stuff like that. He has to get better at. I don't know what it is about him that, especially this year, struggled with that, because in the past he hasn't really had that issue. And at times during the season, he was fantastic at some of those throws. It was just very inconsistent and something he has to get better at. So the decision to move forward with Tua, I'm all for if they do it the right way. And I hope from these reports that they do it the right way. Because the last 2 years he's been here, it's like, guys, we got to do better at making our quarterback look better. And we've just done the worst. We literally could not have done worse at doing that. And whoever comes in here has to be like, okay, we're surrounding this dude with as much talent as we can, and let's just go out there and do it. And hopefully, and that brings us to our next news story, it's a guy who knows offense. So let's get into some of the coaching rumors and some of the staff rumors that are surrounding the team right now. So these are all the guys that are going to be interviewed or have already been interviewed with the team. So let's go through all of these names, whether I like them or not. A little bit, obviously, history about them, success that they've had, and stuff of that nature. So let's start with Brian Daboll. To me, this is the best candidate. This is the best coach the Dolphins could select. New England guy, a Saban guy, and had success without them, I think is the biggest point I want to make. He left New England. He left Alabama. He went to Buffalo and had a lot of success as a play caller. Everywhere he's been, he has had success, and he's had success without those guys. A lot of coordinators, a lot of the time, obviously, just have success because everything around them is great. Not necessarily that they do their job right, it's everything around them. They just kind of are around and they win. Not Brian Daboll. He went to Buffalo with Josh Allen, who at the time the narrative was he's a bust. He'll never be an accurate thrower. He can never throw from the pocket. Well, when Daboll got there, he turned his entire career around and turned that Buffalo offense around to being one of the most intimidating forces in the NFL, one of the best offenses in the league. And I really love the way he runs that offense. It is very creative. From under center and shotgun, it's creative. And not to mention the fact that he coached Tua at Alabama. So I just really like Brian Daboll. I think one of the things I talked about with Brian Flores and what made him so special is he brings a unique scheme. He's really good at calling plays defensively. Well, so does Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll brings a unique scheme. He's really good at calling offensive plays. So, in saying that, I think Daboll would be the perfect candidate for the Dolphins and the perfect head coach for them. He coached Tua. He has familiarity with him. He coached against this team, which I think is a plus, so he's familiar with the roster. And I think it's just perfect all the way around. I mean, I think he's a bright dude and a guy who has a bright future in this league. And all the way around, from love his scheme, love his play calling ability, love the success that he's had. He's had success without those guys, which I think is good. And Sean McDermott doesn't call plays offensively. You know, this isn't like a Sean McVay situation where you're getting their offensive coordinator who just probably just sits around and gets some coffee. No, Daboll was actually calling those plays. He was actually coming up with those schemes. So that means a lot to me when I'm looking at a head coach, and it is looking at their scheme. Is it unique? Does it work? Are you a good play caller? He checks all of those boxes. And if I was Stephen Ross, I would just pick up the phone and be like, well, how much money do you want? Come to Miami. So he's my number one guy. I think he's a perfect fit for the Dolphins. The next guy on the list is Leslie Frazier, also from the Buffalo Bills. The thing about Leslie is, obviously, he was a head coach before in Minnesota, and they made a lot of kind of poor roster decisions. And, you know, he had that 1 year with Adrian Peterson where they went to the playoffs with Christian Ponder on the back of Adrian Peterson. Obviously, that was, I think, AP won MVP that season. So he did have a playoff appearance. They obviously lost to the Green Bay Packers. And I think, was it the first round of the playoffs? I think so. Someone's going to have to check, fact check me on that. So he's had success as a head coach. Now, how much do you want to put that on Adrian Peterson and his historic season? You know, that's up to you to decide, really. But he's had success as a defensive coordinator. You know, he helped build a pretty good foundation, and then Zimmer kind of took it over defensively. You know, he was the head coach for the Vikings from 2010 to 2013. His record, let me look at it right here. He was 21-32 as a head coach in the NFC North. Obviously, he's been a long-time defensive coordinator for the Bengals, for the Vikings, for the Buccaneers as well. I think so, if I'm not mistaken, and the Buffalo Bills. One thing about Leslie that is going against him, at least from me when I look at his resume, is number one, he coaches on a team and he coaches a positional group that Sean McDermott has been very good at doing for a long time. Sean McDermott's been a great defensive coordinator, so I'm not really sure what his influence on the scheme and play calling is, because to me, when I watch the Buffalo Bills, I'm like, okay, that's Sean McDermott's defense. Like, if you look at when Sean McDermott coached the Panthers and when he coaches the Bills, their defense is the exact same. It's literally the exact same. So I don't really know how. Not that I don't really know. I know that Leslie Frazier is not running his scheme. He's running Sean McDermott's scheme. So to me, that's a huge negative against him. The fact that he hasn't had that great of a record as a head coach, and he did make poor roster decisions. I don't know how much of that falls on him as the head coach of that team. To me, it just is like, I don't know if I'm okay. He was a long-time defensive coordinator. I think that's a plus. He has a ton of experience. He has had a lot of success with a lot of different defenses. I think those are huge pluses. But to me, all of those other negatives about it, it's a little bit too much for me. And it makes him one of the least desirable candidates, in my opinion. Plus, his veteran coach doesn't necessarily mean that's a good thing, though. Just because you've been around a long time doesn't mean that's a positive. This next candidate is Kellen Moore, obviously the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys this past season, and he has been for a few years now. This is going to be a no for me on Kellen Moore as well. I don't like Kellen Moore. He's had Dak Prescott. He's had a really good and really talented offense that he's coached. I'm kind of going to give most of the credit to those guys. We don't have a Dak Prescott on the team as of right now. We don't know what Tua could be. But it's not that, and it's not that right now, at least. And Ezekiel Elliott, and Tony Pollard, and CeeDee Lamb, and Cedric Wilson, and Gallup, Amari Cooper. I mean, dude, they have so many great players offensively that it's like, all right, Kellen Moore, you really don't. And this is a theme with these candidates. He doesn't bring a unique scheme. He's not necessarily a great play caller. It's just like, most of his success came from his roster. For me, this is a no. And he had a franchise quarterback he was coaching and calling the plays for. So this is a no for me, for sure. And I think it's probably a no for most. I'm interested to see how many, because Kellen Moore has been a big name around the NFL in terms of getting a head coaching job. It'd be interesting to see how you guys feel about that, because to me, it's just like a no-brainer no. All right, moving on to the next candidate. This dude talking about this is actually kind of fun. Dan Quinn is the next guy. Dan Quinn, one of my more favorite candidates for this. I guess that's probably not the best way to say it, but one of the more, I guess, likable ones. He has a lot of negatives. Not a lot. I guess not. I wouldn't say a lot of negatives, but I don't know, man. Some of his Falcon stuff isn't great. But let me start with the positives of Dan Quinn. The positives of Dan Quinn is he's a fantastic defensive coordinator. He changed his scheme completely. He coached one of the worst defenses a year ago into one of the best defenses this year. Now, granted, I think to his credit in a way as well, they had a really good draft with Michael Parsons, obviously, and that draft helped them turn it around big time. But a lot of the same players were key contributors to that defense. And I think he really helped them and really helped their careers. So it wasn't like he took over a very talented defense and he just kind of mooched off of that. No, he really helped develop a lot of those guys into what they are now. And he completely changed his scheme, which I think is a huge plus for a head coach who, Dan Quinn was very famous for running the Seattle scheme a lot. He changed it up a ton when he went to Dallas. He was more multiple, which I think is a big plus. So he does kind of have a really great understanding of schemes in the NFL, which is a big plus for me. So he's great. He's a really good play caller. He does really well with developing talent, as we saw from Dallas. Really helped Trayvon Diggs along into a career for him within his scheme. And Mike McCarthy doesn't coach defense, and he turned a really bad unit into a really good unit. So all of those things are big pluses for me. Plus, he's been to a Super Bowl as a head coach. Some of the stuff in Atlanta wasn't all that great. It kind of fell apart really hard at the end there. So that's probably the biggest negative against him. But he did go to a Super Bowl in Atlanta. He did win the division in Atlanta. He did have consistent success in back-to-back of those years with 2016 and 2017, where he went back to the playoffs the very next year and barely lost to the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. So the man has a lot of success in his career, and he does bring a scheme that would have a positive effect on the roster and on the football team to have success. So it's not just that, this guy kind of just is around really successful organizations, or he's coaching a franchise quarterback. Dan Quinn does bring something to your team to help it win, and has had a lot of success as a coach as well. So to me, this is definitely one of the more desirable candidates, especially when you compare him to people like Leslie Frazier. I think Dan Quinn is the better version of Leslie Frazier, in my opinion. He's the veteran coach. His regular season record as a head coach is 43-42. His postseason record is 3-2. His career record was 46-44. And he only has a division title under his belt. So to me, Dan Quinn, great scheme, great play caller, had a lot of success as a head coach. To me, took a bad defensive unit and turned it great in 1 year. And the only difference was him. So to me, Dan Quinn is a great candidate to be the Dolphins' next head coach. And I don't know why Dan gets a lot of hate, because it's like, even his defenses in Atlanta weren't that great. He dealt with a lot of injuries. I'm talking about talent level wise. And to me, I mean, he had a lot of success as a head coach, and to me, he's a good defensive schemer and a good play caller as well. Moving on from Dan Quinn, let's go to Vance Joseph. Now, Dolphins fans are, and I want to say this again in case people are getting confused. These are all candidates that the Dolphins have interviewed or are going to interview. So these guys are all going to be in the Dolphins building over the next 2 weeks. These are the guys that the Dolphins are interested in. So let's go to Vance Joseph. Now, Vance Joseph, he's one of the better candidates, I would say. He has a lot of bad negatives about him. The thing that I do love about him is this is something that I look at with all of these guys is what is your scheme? Is your unit better because of you? Do you have a great understanding of NFL schemes? Do you have a unique scheme? And are you a great play caller? And those are the things that I look at when I'm looking at why you should become a head coach and why are you even in this interview to begin with. And Vance Joseph, I think the thing that he does best, he's a great play caller. I love his scheme. It's aggressive. He blitzes a lot. I love that. It fits exactly what the Dolphins were built to do. Be aggressive, blitz, and cause havoc. That's exactly what they were built to do. So he would have no problem being the play caller for this defense. I think he would have a lot of success doing so. So that's a huge plus. The negatives, and obviously he's coached in Miami before, but the negatives, he did not have success as a head coach at all. He was 12-21 as a head coach. He was pretty bad. He was coaching a really bad roster, and John Elway really did not handle that roster well after their Super Bowl championship. It's like a lot of those guys were aging, and he probably should have cleaned the slate a little bit harder than he did, and that really hurt Vance Joseph's tenure as the Broncos head coach. I think a lot of the positives about him is, even in 2016 when he was the defensive coordinator for the Dolphins, he was one of the biggest reasons why we made the playoffs. He took a really not so very talented Dolphins team defense and found ways to have success with it. I mean, his corners were awful that year. It was Tony Lippett and Byron Maxwell were his two outside corners. And again, this is a guy who likes to be aggressive. And he got all that he could out of that unit. And he has had a lot of success with the Cardinals as well as their defensive coordinator. So, great play caller, really unique scheme, aggressive, fits the Dolphins' defensive roster. Bad negatives is did not have success as a head coach. As a defensive coordinator, though, he's pretty awesome. So, it's kind of a weird balance. I mean, he does have legitimate excuses why he didn't have success in Denver. Because that roster was god-awful, and the way it was handled was even worse, and a lot of those drafts were really bad. I mean, there was a draft, and their first-round pick was Paxton Lynch, for God's sakes, and Garrett Bowles. I mean, there was a lot of really not great drafts, and Vance Joseph did not have control over that. So, say what you will about his head coaching tenure, but, he has had a lot of success as a defensive coordinator, and I think to me, if I had to make a top three, it's Brian Daboll, Dan Quinn, and Vance Joseph. I think those are my three favorite candidates. They all have unique schemes. They're all great play callers. And I think they all bring something unique to the team to have success with it. And to me, if you want to be a head coach in this league now, you have to have a unique scheme. You have to be really good at whatever coordinator job you did. And I think all three of those guys fit that description. And they did their job really well. And Brian Daboll is a top 5 offensive coordinator. He's coaching one of the best offenses in the league. I would say the same thing with Vance Joseph and even Dan Quinn. Those are top tier coordinators at their position. But again, it's hard to ignore the head coach stuff. It really is. It's because it's like how much he didn't really improve the situation he was in, and it kind of is it is what it was. So I don't know. It kind of just depends on how you look at that. That's kind of the biggest thing going against him. So we still have 2 candidates to go, and these guys I don't even know why they're being interviewed. Thomas Brown for the Rams. I don't know a lot about Thomas Brown. I don't know a lot about his backstory. Don't know a lot about his coaching history. I can only kind of look at he's a running backs coach. So that kind of knocks out 2 things that I look for. He doesn't bring a unique scheme. Not a great play caller. So it's like, okay, so what does he do that's really, what has he done in the NFL that's really successful? Not really anything. How much credit do you give him for developing running backs? To me, I give him none. Because Sean McVay, his track record with running backs is pretty fantastic. And his scheme with running backs is pretty fantastic because his scheme is so good that, and it obviously, the running back is really heavily involved in that scheme, whether it's catching the ball out of the backfield or running it, that it's like, okay, Thomas Brown, I don't really know, and again, maybe I'm a little bit ignorant on this situation with Thomas Brown because I don't know a ton about him, but it's like, okay, you kind of were just around a really good head coach with a really good mind for running the football. I don't know how much credit you get for that. So to me, Thomas Brown is a no. That's just a no for me. And then Mike McDaniel is the other guy that the Dolphins are bringing in. I don't know what the heck they see in this dude. I know he's the run game coordinator for them. We all know who calls plays in San Francisco. And we all know who creates that running scheme in San Francisco. And it's not Mike McDaniel. So I don't know what Mike McDaniel does well or does at all on the 49ers coaching staff. So this is a huge no for me. Mike McDaniel, I'm sorry, man. You're going to have to go to a different team and call plays and have success for me to even believe in anything that you say to me in this interview. So, yeah, that's gonna be it's gonna be a no for me. To give you guys more background on the situation, Brian Daboll and Frazier have already interviewed with the Dolphins. In case you're wondering, Brian Daboll is also going to go interview with I believe the Giants and Bears. So there's a lot of competition for this man's services, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, I think if the Dolphins were either to get Daboll, Quinn, or Vance Joseph, I think there's a lot of positives to look for all three of those dudes. I think all three of those guys have a lot of really good qualities about them and really good things that they could bring to the team. Now, like Kellen Moore, Thomas Brown, and Mike McDaniel, if any of those three guys were hired, I don't know if I'd ever make a video again. Because it's like, how stupid can this franchise be to look at those three and hire either the three? Why would you do that? So, and the funny thing about Kellen Moore is Dak Prescott was a great quarterback before he even ever got there. Amari Cooper was a great receiver before he even ever got there. Ezekiel Elliott was a great running back before he got there. Tony Pollard was already good before Kellen Moore started calling plays for them. Their offensive line with Zach Martin and some of those guys were already good before he even got there. So I don't really understand what Kellen Moore has done for them other than just kind of be there. And I understand that it does take a lot to call plays in the NFL, but it's pretty easy to call plays for the Cowboys. It's not as easy to call plays for someone like the Dolphins on offense, who were not so good on offense. And same thing with Daboll. Daboll took over a job as the offensive coordinator, and it was bad before he got there. And when he got there, he made it a lot better. I don't see that with Kellen Moore. So, that's going to be a huge one for me too. So if the Dolphins either hire Mike McDaniel, Kellen Moore, or Thomas Brown, no offense to those guys, but it's like, you guys just haven't done enough in the NFL for me to believe in anything that you've done or are going to do. The other guys have actually earned it. Vance Joseph has earned it. Leslie Frazier has earned it. Dan Quinn has earned it. Brian Daboll has earned it. None of the other three have earned anything yet. So they need to do more coaching, especially without Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan for the McDaniel and Brown. You guys need to do something else on different teams for me to believe in that. And not to say that you can't be under a great a head coach and have success after that. Because we've seen, like, Andy Reid has a really good coaching tree, but he's also had some bad ones too. But to me, when I look at head coaching candidates, that's just how I look at it. I'm not saying that you can't be successful as a head coach being under a great head coach. We saw that with Brian Flores. I'm not saying that you can't happen. But I think with all of those guys, with like Andy Reid and Harbaugh, you could look at their team when they were coaching on that team and really see their impact on that team. I don't see the impact of Thomas Brown or Mike McDaniel or Kellen Moore. I just don't see the impact. So those are big time no's for me. Huge no's for me. So let's get into the fan Q&A, ladies and gentlemen. This is where we answer fans' questions. Obviously, don't know why I have to say it like that. It's just, when you get into these things, you gotta say it a certain way. I don't know what else to tell you guys. All right, let's get into the fan Q&A. This first question comes from J-Pack. He says, I know you're probably still salty about Flo getting fired, and I just wanted to point out a few things. Flo had full control over the game day roster, which meant he looked at Jesse Davis playing out of position at tackle and was like, yes, that's fine. Same thing with leaving Austin Jackson at tackle for half of the season before realizing he's garbage at tackle. Or how about cutting Jermaine Manor, I don't know how to say that dude's name. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sounding like a complete moron, but I'm just gonna be honest with you. That the way I was about to say that is gonna make me even look like more of a moron. Who gets picked up by the Raiders and is actually good. Also, the utter refusal to address the running back position is on him. He came from New England where they take the same approach to the running. I disagree with that. They definitely do not take the same approach as the Dolphins to the running back spot. They just have a better line and O-line coach, which is why they can get away with it. They have been. I mean, they drafted a running back in the first round. So let's calm down on that a little bit. I'm just saying. So I don't know. Okay, so people hold this against Flo. Okay, so you're holding Flo's job was to coach the team. And even if if you pick the players, you pick the players. Those are some of the best drafts this team has had in 20 years. So that's also gone. That guy's gone now. The guy who picked Waddle and Phillips in the first round and Holland in the second, he's gone now. So if we're giving him all the credit for that, that guy is gone now. The guy who picked Christian Wilkins in the first round, he's gone now. The guy who picked Raekwon Davis in the second round, he's also gone now. The guy who coached the team to back-to-back winning seasons, which they haven't done in 20 years, that guy, he's not here anymore. So what are we saying that Flo did bad? I don't understand. I just don't get it. Like what? And I'm passionate about this Jack Pack. It makes me mad thinking about it. I just don't understand. So, and again, Jack Pack points out Jesse Davis. By the way, Jesse Davis was here before he got there. Austin Jackson, yes, you're right about that. That whole situation is could have been definitely better, and stuff like that. The Igbenogany thing, and if we're giving credit to Flo on all of this stuff, obviously it was a mess. The way the direction of the team kind of just ignored the offensive side of the football and all of those things, yes, weren't great. But all the things I just mentioned are things that this team has not done in a long time. This is what I'm saying, man. The man exceeded expectations, and he's getting punished for it. He literally is getting punished for exceeding expectations. Nobody thought that team in his second year was going to win 10 games. No one did. In his second year, no one thought he was going to win 10 games. I just repeated myself again. Don't know why I did that. And I said it with a different tone, which is even weirder. And even in his third year, obviously he had higher expectations and didn't meet them. But nobody thought in those 2 years he was going to have that much success after his first year. Or even when he was hired, for that matter. Everybody said, and I will constantly say this was a 4-year rebuild. Everyone said that. And he didn't get to coach his 4th year. So, in saying that, the man only got fired for positive reasons. I really don't know why this man got fired. Why did he get fired? Someone explain to me why he got fired. I just don't get it. There was too many things going for him to fire him. There really was. The way he handled the Deshaun Watson situation, I will say this again. That was the worst possible thing that you could bring up, in my opinion. Like, he did not handle that right. He is supposed to be the head man of the dang organization. He should not have let that get out of control like he did. That was the worst thing he could have done. The worst thing he did as a head coach. That criticism of him is completely fair, in my opinion, and was the biggest kind of dropping of the ball thing that he did. But, and I want to point something out as well. Who knows how that draft is going to work out? Obviously, the Tua draft. Who knows how it's going to work out in the end? Hopefully, at least they got a franchise quarterback out of there. The other two guys, I'm not too confident in. Like Igbenogany and Austin Jackson, not too confident in. And if he was the driving force behind that, that's not great either. I will agree with that. But to me, the jury's still out on that draft class. Austin Jackson played better at guard, and Tua, we'll see if he becomes a franchise quarterback. But I disagree with you, Jack. I don't really know what your point is, other than he says you're still. I know you're gonna probably still salty about Flo getting fired, and I just wanted to point out a few things. Flo had so I don't really know where Jack Pack how he feels about the firing of Brian Flores. I don't want to get too upset about it. But yeah, those are all legitimate criticisms of how he did not improve the offense side of the football at all when he was the head coach. I think, again, to kind of reiterate this, the way he handled the offensive side of the ball was not great. I think we can all agree with that. But him as a head coach, pretty dang good. The man can coach football, I can tell you that right now, especially on defense. This next question comes from Daniel. And one thing I want to point out before we leave Jack Pack, it really does worry me that if it's true that Flo was the one picking these players, it really concerns me that Chris Greer doesn't at least have that on that patch on his arm to say, hey man, I was the one who drafted Waddle and Phillips and Holland. And some of the other really, Jerome Baker and all of those guys that have been really good picks, Zach Sealer, all of those roster decisions, it's like, I don't mean to stutter so much, I sound like a moron. It's like, who do we give credit for that then? It's like, Chris, if you're going to be here, what is your excuse, man? Did you pick him or did you not pick him, dude? Good God. Because now it makes me even worried that if Flo is the guy who's making those decisions, that's the best stretch of GM you've had was with Brian Flores. So that's not even a positive, going for him. So I don't know, man. It blows my mind. It's like, who gets credit for what? I don't know. I hate. I don't want to say. I don't want to use the word hate. I just, Chris Greer really makes me mad. Let's just put it that way. This next question comes from K. Daniel. He says, Mr. Skaggs, I listened to your previous video, and I was with you up until I heard how devious Coach Flo was towards Tua. It makes sense because he was like that with Stills, Van Noy, and other coaches and players. If I had to choose, I'd pick Tua over Flo. Do you not believe in the potential in Tua? It's not that I don't believe in the potential to Tua. It's just that it's potential. It's not really real yet. So what Flo has done and his track record, the man suffers criticisms because he did exceed expectations, which to me is a positive. But what Flo did, and people have pointed this out, Flo did all of that with a really bad offense and not so great quarterback play. Let's be honest, he did. He did all of the things that he did with those things on his roster. So for me, if I had to pick between the two, yes, I would pick Brian Flores for sure. But I do believe in the potential of Tua. I think there is a lot of potential there, and I think he can reach it. But again, it's not real yet. We don't know if that will happen. This next question, you want to talk about a kick in the balls, man? Like, what? Why would they do this, man? I don't understand it. Hopefully they make this coaching decision. They make the right decision. Because if they don't, dude, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I really don't know what I'm gonna do. Because I'm gonna have to sit through a Mike McDaniel tenure, dude. For him to get fired within a year, no, thank you, guys. I hope they make the right decision. And how the heck is Eric Bieniemy not at least on this list, dude? How is he not on this list? Can someone explain that to me? And how is Harbaugh not even involved in this, for the love of God? He's way better than the other, Moore, Brown, and McDaniel. Like, good God, dude. This next question comes from Casey Fanatic. He says, hey, Skaggs, I like our running backs, Duke Johnson and Phillip Lindsay. Therefore, running back is not a priority. I believe we need 2 tackles, wide receiver, quarterback, competition for 2, and a linebacker. I completely agree with that comment that Casey just laid down. I completely agree with you on that. Like, I agree that running Duke Johnson, Phillip Lindsay, I like them a lot. I do believe we need receivers and tackles, and I do believe we need competition for Tua. I think those are all things that we need. This next question comes from Jared Dickerson. He says, hey, Skaggs, do you think Brian Daboll is the best candidate for our next head coach? And would you be willing to give Vance Joseph a chance? I have fond memories of him as our defense coordinator in 2016. Absolutely, dude. I think those two, if they were head coach, if they were hired tomorrow as our head coach, I could see all 3 of Dan Quinn, Vance Joseph, and Brian Daboll having a ton of success as our head coach. Like I've said, I already explained why I think that, but I really do believe that. I could see all 3 of those guys having success as head coaches. And I do have fond memories of Vance Joseph. And again, the way he calls plays defensively is perfect for the defense that we have already. So the roster fits his scheme. It fits Dan Quinn's scheme, in case you guys were wondering that as well. And if Daboll is hired, we're just going to have to look her in the eye and say, listen, man, you're a great offensive coordinator. You understand offense clearly. Just here's the keys to the car. Okay, Chris Greer, he doesn't care what anybody does anyway. He just lets people make picks, apparently. He doesn't do his job. All he does is, I guess, scout. I don't know what Chris Greer does. I really don't know what Chris Greer does, other than linger. I don't know what Chris Greer does. But Daboll, Here's the keys to the car. Fix the offense. And I think that's another big reason why he's my favorite candidate. Because I think he's done it before, and I think he can do it again. And he knows how to pick receivers too, man. He's with Gabriel, and obviously he's done a lot of great things with Isaiah McKenzie. So I like Daboll a lot. This next question comes from Jag Pack, who's again, Jag, thank you for asking questions. I really do appreciate it. He says, about some of your points last show, I agree with you that Chris Greer should have been fired. He clearly can't draft in the line, which is a big deal. He also drafted Charles Harris, which should have got him fired. I also agree Ross is an idiot. As long as he's in charge, they will not be successful. He should have fired Flo and Greer. He never fired the GM and the coach at the same time, which I think was why we've had a lot of reoccurring issues. I completely agree with you, Jag. I think we can have success with Stephen Ross. He just has to get really lucky. And hopefully he gets lucky with whoever they pick as the next head coach. And hopefully he gets lucky with Tua. This next question comes from Bad Bandit. He says, hey, guys, isn't it funny how during the Fins' 7-game win streak, all the NFL talking heads... is that... I want to make... Hold on. Before we move on, did I answer Jackpack's question? I don't even know if I did. No, I do. Yeah, I did. I agree with you, Jackpack. You're right. And some of the things that you said there. This next question goes for Bad Bandit. He says, hey, guys, isn't it funny how during the first 7-game win streak, all the NFL talking heads... discredit us, saying we played weak competition. Excuse me, during our win streak, not our losing streak. All the NFL talking heads discredit us, saying we played weak competition and had bad quarterbacks. And now they use the win streak as a way to make Flo look good and the Dolphins look like a terrible franchise. I hate the national media. Dude, that's another thing that I completely despise and can make another video on. The national media's coverage of this has been God, dude. Oh my God, if I didn't hate these talking heads already, dude. They just brought me to another level with them, dude. And you know what? A lot of these people suck at their job anyway. And this kind of illustrated, it's like, dude, what the heck do you guys, where do these guys get off on talking about this team? Getting mad, I'm hitting the mic. What in the, like, dude, the fact that our team stream feed is filled with people like from Speak For Yourself, like, where the heck? I felt like, dude, if this could get any worse, it just did. It just got worse. How does it get worse, guys? How does it keep getting worse? I don't understand it. It just keeps getting worse. All right. I completely agree with you, man. Like, I'd fight. And again, I'd probably lose to go to the hospital. But I'd fight a lot of these guys, man, just for saying this stuff. So it makes me want to. It makes me want to just like, all right, let's put some gloves on. I gotta take out this anger on some of you. Like, or at least go on one of these shows and just completely dunk on these people because they don't know what they're talking about. I don't care if they played football. These guys just do not know what they're talking about. And I'm not even just talking about when they talk about the Dolphins. Anything that these guys talk about, it's just not. First of all, it's not interesting to listen to, and second of all, it's just they say really stupid stuff. This next question comes from Beef. He says, "Hey, Skaggs, do you believe Ross not getting Jim Harbaugh is just a smokescreen?" No, I think that's real. I really do. Stephen Ross is not smart enough to set off a smokescreen. This next question comes from Mark Jefferson. He says, "Where do we go from here?" LOL. Here's who, if I was running the dang team, Brian Flores would never have been fired. And Chris Greer would have been fired a long time ago. But if I was running the team, and I really couldn't even have a conversation with Chris Greer in the room, if I was the owner of this team, I could not look Chris Greer in the eye. I'd be like, Chris, just go away, dude. Okay? I will pay you to go away. Anyway, the direction we go in now is hiring one of the three, Dan Quinn, Vanches, or Brian Daboll. Hire one of those guys and give Tua a chance on offense. That's the direction we go in, and hopefully we can execute that plan. Anyway, guys, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I could jump through a flaming fire wheel right now. That's how upset I am. I'll see you guys in the next one.